it's Debbie here, and I am with some great friends that I have met and come to know. And I've invited them here because I work with a lot of families who really struggle with wondering if there's really hope and redemption for certain things in their families' lives. And so this group of people, some I had met before today, some this is my first time to meet. But we're going to be sharing stories of hope and redemption, and I hope that when you watch this video, you'll watch it all the way to the end, and that you will share it with people all over the world, with all your Facebook friends and your family, and just people who are really going through struggles in life. So, welcome, and I'm going to have you just each tell a little of your story, how you grew up as a child maybe, when your struggle began, what was a turning point, and then we'll just have a little discussion at the end of this. So when you just introduce yourself, Raymond, I'll let you start. So just introduce yourself.
My name is Raymond. I'm 53 years old. I grew up in Lexington. Didn't have a terrible childhood. Had parents in the house the whole time. Had 4 sisters that I was close to. But at an early age, I started getting into trouble. It was always something. I was searching for some kind of feeling, but I could never be satisfied in anything, whether I was playing baseball or basketball, or I got into working on cars. So I went to work early, like at 18. I had the same career for the past 27 years. So the world says you need to check these boxes and you can find happiness. Well, I bought and paid for a home, drove a new car for 18 months, long-term relationships, big vacations. But there's just always something I was missing. Now, the entire time that I was going and punching the clock and doing what the world says make you happy, I was deep into addiction. Started with alcohol, turned into cocaine. So alcohol and cocaine, I broke my neck for the second time in 3 places in 2000. So I was introduced to opiates. There again, I'm fueled on alcohol, cocaine. Now I got bottles, tons of bottles with my name on it. So, and going through that, I guess I really didn't start spinning out till maybe 2008 or 9. I left the job that I've been there 22 years, basically because I was just bored, no satisfaction. They give you a $3,000 watch and a big check on your 20th year, and it was about like paying off my first house. It was so short-lived. Just there again, never happy, never satisfied with anything. So right after I broke my neck, it was kind of like a pity party at times, because if I wanted to get on the pills a little harder, people would kind of co-sign it. So now my addiction, everybody's like, well, he's been hurt. So it was like 2015, transmission fell out of a car and crushed my sciatic nerve. And so it pretty much put me into like an early retirement stage. But now, continuing in the drug addiction, I'd always sold drugs. So in my mind, it was, doesn't matter how bad the dope dealer gets, you can always sell drugs. So with that, the use got a lot higher. I was usually good to get in a serious case about every 10 years, but I've been arrested 17 times and convicted of something. 9 lifetime DUIs. This is my second big drug case. But all through that time, it's like every time I got done with court, I forgot about it. I didn't even realize I'd been arrested 17 times until I added them all up on paper about 6 months ago. So it was like, but again, I was still searching for something. I hadn't found it in drugs, alcohol, gambling, women, home ownership, boats, cars, trucks, motorcycles. So I get an $89,000 check from the transmission falling on me, but I didn't get it till 2019, maybe the latter part of 2018. But I thought, who am I going to leave this money to? And so, I hadn't been homeless. I'd always had a place to stay. And my flesh was like, I'm just going to spend it. So, off to the races. In less than 9 months, I took it from that to $4,800, and I didn't purchase anything you could hold in your hand. I'd OD'd 6 times. Hospitalized twice, but no red flags. As soon as I got out of hospital, that was right back after it. So we get pulled over. I was going to my mom's for Thanksgiving in 2019, and for the week I stopped and got 7 grams of heroin, 14 grams of cocaine, and 100 Xanaxes. I didn't want to be sick while I was out of town. So turns out, fortunately, I got pulled over, and I bought a car, put it in somebody else's name. That guy drove me around, shot me up. So the officer says, you can find you a ride. Not because I was loyal, but everything in the car was mine. So I said, if he rolls out, everything in the car is mine. And the cop was like confused at first. He gets his cameras on and asks me again. I tell him, and the guy rolls out in my Cadillac, which I've yet to see the car even yet, but that's okay too. So the first 9 days in jail, I was in and out of a wheelchair. I never thought I'd make it through the detox this time. I could have bonded out, but we retained an attorney instead. So I think it was 19 or 20 days in, Scott from Redemption Road, Hope City, North Main Community Church, came and interviewed me. I didn't know it's because I was locked up. This guy looked like brand new money on the other side of the glass. I was like, man, who's this guy? And I was thinking new car salesman. He was just, he glowed. I seen it to other people, but I hadn't even put it together then. My workman's comp attorney was Christian, and I knew one other. So they hit me with a parole violation that night. Scott come back the next morning. They still wouldn't release me. I was back in court the next day. It took him 4 trips, and he got me out of jail. And that's to Lexington and back. So it was a pretty good trip. I get down there, start telling me about the Lord. And, well, first night in the church, I see Mookie, and the teardrops and the tattoo on his hands. And these guys had big beards, and I was like, well, I'm in a pretty solid place, is what I was thinking. I just walked out of jail, so I felt comfortable, to say the least. These guys didn't act like the people I was in jail with. So I'd heard they're going to love me until I can love myself. I thought the newness is going to wear off. They tell me they're not worried about any kind of money. They want me to come to know Christ. So then I hear you can turn everything over. And I was like, what do you mean everything? They said, all your problems. And man, it sounded like a really good deal. I was just thinking, there's just no way he's going to take this 51 years. So I kind of drug my feet at first, but like I said, I could see evidence of Christ in everybody's life that worked there manually. And then we go to church. And then you can see the evidence in their life as the body of Christ. Just really cared about each other, didn't really look for any return on a favor. You always heard of somebody, where our dentist was the guy that does a Bible study, and then our doctor was the one that cooks some of the meals on Sunday. So I was like, man, this is definitely networked. It was, so I just, I started reading in the Bible. Things started kind of making sense to me. When I first asked God to save me, I didn't even tell nobody. I still get emotional about it. But I knew something would have to change I stopped cussing. I, kept my hands to myself. I stayed compliant, I guess. And then I looked in the Bible for the next 4 to 6 weeks on how God would take it back. I felt like it was a stupid question, but it really got me into the Bible. Of course, He doesn't want it back. He wants you to lay your life down, and there's a cost to it. It's the best decision that I've yet to ever make. So I graduated the program. I stayed back and decided to work. This whole time, I got a trafficking heroin case. So I'm actually still out on bond. I was clean 2 years Sunday in the program, 2 years December 10th. So, but God's really been good to me.
Amen.
So that's kind of how I got here.
Amen.
Thanks for sharing that.
That's good.
Okay, Billy, who are you?
Well, I got old buddy Dale. You said it to me a lot. Here you. So Billy Newsom. My name's Billy Newsom. I'm from Bateville, Kentucky. Yeah. And so I guess as a youngster, I was raised in a good home. Had a good family, good upbringing. I had 6 brothers and sisters. And so I was kind of taught good family morals. For the most part, it was a good upbringing, and I was real close. I was real close to each of my siblings, and so as we'd get older, we'd all kind of get into our own lane, and so I just kind of start chasing our own dreams. And as I got into high school, I liked to play sports. Wasn't any good, but now I enjoyed it, and so I think it was the atmosphere. It was kind of like just a good fellowship, the brotherhood. And so, I don't know, it was appealing to me. And so that's what I would do for pretty much all through high school. And in the meantime, there was a little separation between me and my oldest brother, which we was like a little over a year apart. And so I'd get to my senior year, my brother was graduated, went off to college. So it was the summer, I was coming up on the graduation, and my brother would come back from college to work with me and my father in his electrical business. And I just remember he was back for about a month and a half, and so we were coming home on our way home from work, and so we were just kind of talking about what we was going to do for 4th of July, and we were, I just kind of remember the conversation we was having, and I can remember it to just exactly the way it happened right now in my head. So it was, we kind of veered off the road, started straddling the center lane. I corrected us, so I pulled us back over. I let go, and it kind of went into the ditch. And so he tried to get us back on track, and he overcorrected it, and so it shot us across the road, caused the vehicle to start flipping, and it threw him out the back window. And it was a Mazda truck, kind of like a Ford Ranger, and so it pushed my seat up on me. And so as it's rolling, I can remember like holding on to the handle and just seeing it tumbling over, and just dust and things flying. And so it come to a stop. I looked over, I noticed he wasn't there, and so I just kind of got into a frantic, and the only way I could get out of the truck was jump out of the driver's side window. It was busted, and got looking around. I couldn't find him. I had people that was coming to kind of like start to pull me away, and I just was determined to kind of find out what was up with my brother, where was he. And so I just kept looking around the vehicle, and so I looked underneath the vehicle, and I remember hearing him take his last breath. So like it was pretty dramatic. And so but I remember, so growing up, I grew up in church, but I just honestly have to say it probably wasn't really always great examples, because so my grandparents were pretty good examples of Christian people, but so my home life wasn't. We never really talked about God. There wasn't prayer or worship time, or like just getting together and reading the Bible. So I kind of had my own little mind of how that worked. But so I remember going over to the fire truck and just praying out to God, like, if you'll save, show me you're real, save my brother. And so it didn't work out that way. My brother passed, and it just a lot of different emotions started kind of working in my mind. A couple of days later was my brother's funeral. I had a buddy that gave me a Xanax to kind of help with the pain. It worked. It got me through the day. A few days later, I would kind of seek him out on the same thing, just because it was all kind of come rattling back into my life and my mind. And so before I know it, I'm taking Xanax and smoking pot every day. I go to jail for the first time, theft of a firearm. Didn't even know I stole a gun. Told the cops that I done it, and then they got jailhouse lawyers trying to tell me, I'm hemmed up, and so, man, it worked out though. Luckily, I think I for sure have had people praying for me all my life, and so I was able to kind of get out of that. But it wouldn't stop me. It didn't get my attention at all. I kept running into drugs, and I thought it was cool hanging out with the people I was locked up with. I thought they were sincere, loyal, and so, man, I tell you, it would take a long, hard path of being out of jail and seeing the same people over and over before I started to realize, man, my life's not changing, and neither is theirs, and I'm in the same kind of pattern that's continuing to get worse. And so there was a lot of stealing and just buddies that I had was all dying from addiction, and I remember getting to a place when is it going to be my turn? Because that was I was accepted the fact that I was ready to die. I thought I was, and didn't care if I did. And so I remember 2000. I had a little girl, and then by my high school sweetheart, and then several years later, I had 2 other girls. So I had 3 girls, so it didn't mean nothing to me though. I was so selfish and prideful, I didn't care that I brought life into the world, and it's kind of hard to swallow now. But so I just keep running crazy, destruction, manipulate my family, causing pain and grief throughout all the lives that I was kind of entangled with. In 2014, my dad came down with cancer. He was my hero up to that point, and so I just remember the conversation we had. He just started bawling, crying, and telling me that he was going to die. And so it was stage 4. So it destroyed me. So all those emotions from the past come flooding back in. I was like, what am I going to do? So luckily, man, my dad, he was a real man, because he left one last good example in my life, and that was he started reaching out for the Lord. And so telling me too that he knew all this time he was creating a world here of riches and wealth that he was not going to be able to take with him, and in fact he didn't care nothing about it, but it was too late. And so he knew. So it's kind of wild, man, when you get in that sense of despair, what really matters. And so I seen him start reaching out for the Lord, trying to go to church, wanting to do Bible studies. And so at the time it didn't mean a whole lot to me. It was kind of really an inconvenience because I was strung out, and so I just that 6 months was probably the hardest I ever tried staying sober, and I wasn't even real close to being sober at all, because I didn't want my dad to die and not be proud of me. And so that's exactly what happened. He died. Man, it caused me to run even harder, to dig even deeper into drugs, and just trying to find a way out of the misery. So a few years would go on. I lose my girls, caught a DUI, lost my kids. And I never went on my problems. So it was time to keep going. I get to the place where my wife was all I had, and so it just come to a place where I had some accountability, and I had to get some help. And so I reached out. I went to a couple of different rehabs, and I seen that they was the same way people was that I was dealing with in the world. lying and cheating, and it was about money or self-pride. Like it wasn't not really anything about helping me. So I would leave. And so Joanne, which is kind of Rachel, kind of paved the path to Barberville through Joanne Van Zant from Beta Boy. And so I remember getting a hold of her, and she told me they'd love me back to sobriety. And so that caught my attention, and so that was kind of a prick on my heart, like, man, I haven't heard that in a long time, and for what? Why would they love me? So I'd come to Barberville, I'd meet Dan, which is one of the guys that runs Redemption Road, and I just remember asking him, like, he was just laughing and just telling me things about the rehab, and I just remember asking him, like, is this how you're gonna be in the morning? Because I was so used to people changing, like telling me one thing, and then the next day you find out, ain't nothing like I thought. But he was so, like, it was just crazy how he answered it, because he was like, he just kind of laughed, and he looked at Kim, my wife, and he was like, what's he mean? And so she had to break it down for him, because, and so he was like, yes, that's one thing I assure you, is this is me. And so about the same time, the guys that were there come rolling in from church, and so Mookie was part of the crew. I remember seeing the guys and thinking, man, they're everyone high. Like I was going to manipulate that situation. Like, they're high and I'm ready to go. Let's go with me. And so it was just, they was full of joy and happiness that I knew nothing about. So it scared me. And so I'd stick around. I'd detox there at in that little house. We was talking about earlier. Just a little teeny, like what, 2-bedroom house.
Three bedroom.
I was 10 people. I was the 10th guy, and man, but I tell you what, it makes me thankful and grateful for what we have now. We got a big facility.
Yeah.
We continue to grow. We got brothers and sisters. Man, I tell you what, this is my family now.
Yeah.
It's not back in Powell County. It's here in Barberville and Gray, Kentucky.
So sometimes you have to leave to get better.
You have to leave to get
You
there.
have to leave to get better.
Yeah, you can't change your mindset if you don't change your settings.
Oh,
So you have to get out of that environment. And so it's hard. Commitment's very hard.
Yeah.
But you have to be to a place where you're ready to make change. And so, luckily, I had the first thing that was in my face was good Christian people.
Yeah.
And so, and I seen it was something I wanted. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wanted it. And so, I just started kind of chasing after the example that was set before me. And so, reading my Bible, man, we had a great group of guys when I first came to the program. Iron sharpens iron. We all had the same focus, serving the Lord, loving each other, encouraging one another. And so, graduated the program, went to the intern, did the internship. Now I work there, peer support specialist. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I do electrical work for the rehab. Yeah, so my family, yes, thank you. My family, my wife loves me for sure, for real.
So tell me, Billy, were you able to get your kids back?
Yes. So eventually I was able to, so we went to court, went to court, was able to get my weekend visitation back, and then about 5 or 6 months later, after kind of just being like a good example to my kids and to their mother, just kind of being patient, not arguing with her, and so the girls stayed with us for 5 weeks out of summer, and we had to take them back. So we had a lot of good conversations. They kind of talked like they expressed to us they wanted to live with us, and they really liked the community and the family we had, the church family and the body of Christ. And so the day we took them back, we come home. We was kind of brokenhearted, having to send them back home, knowing that they really didn't want to go. We was kind of just in self-pity, me and my wife, and so we seen that the prayer room was going on at our prayer room in Hydrick.
Was it Cannon?
Yeah, Cannon in Barberville, and so she asked me a few times to go. I was didn't really want to, so she was persistent, and so we just finally thought, okay, it's a great idea, let's go. So went over there. We kind of just, after attempting to kind of fix the issue ourselves through seeing lawyers and trying to come up with a game plan, we were just at a dead end. And so we went to our prayer room, kind of cried out to the Lord, give it to God, and so we come home. About an hour later, my daughter's mother had called and said that she knew the girls want to live with us, and she thought that was the best for them. And so 2 weeks later, they come to live with us. I've had custody of them for almost 4 months. And
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome for you. That is a story of hope and redemption. Okay, so next we have Rachel. Rachel, will you introduce yourself and just tell your story?
So my name's Rachel Johnson, and I'm 22 years old, and I'm from Bettyville, Kentucky. So, looking back now, I know my childhood and the way I was raised was a little rough, but growing up, I really didn't realize that it was hard, because that's just what our normal was. That's just how it was, So I've got 6 brothers and sisters, but the only one I was raised with was my older sister, Ashley. And after my mom had me, she left me and my sister there with my dad, and she just left. She was an addiction, chasing men and chasing drugs. So, but my dad was an addiction too, but he still tried to raise us and do the best that he could for us. So I believe by the time that I was 4 and my sister was 5, that was the first time we went to foster care. I can't really remember how long we were going, but it was because we were living in a house that didn't have any electric, and it didn't have any running water. So every time that Dad would lose us, the courts would give him a stipulation to get us back. He would have to turn the electric back on, take a parenting class, and pass a couple drug tests, and he would always get us back. So by the time that I was, just growing up, I was just in and out of foster care. Me and my sister we were moved around a lot. We were never one place for long. We never lived in one place for over a year, And I know that my dad, he wasn't able to love me and care for me rightly, just because he was so lost in his addiction. He was just so lost in self that he just didn't have the capability to love, 2 kids, When I was 10 and my sister was 11, we got took to foster care, but this time they had to separate us because we were too hard to handle together. We were just beyond control. So she started getting moved around, and she got sent to facilities all over the state of Kentucky and a few outside of Kentucky for the next 7 years. She didn't get to come home. And I was gone for a little bit, and then my dad got me back. And I think I was 12 when I came home, or I might have been getting ready to turn 13. And when I came home, I just had this different attitude. I felt like everyone owed me something. I was entitled. I felt like, everything that I had seen and been through was someone else's fault. I felt like everyone owed me something, so I had a bad attitude. And I was just, no one could put up with me, do anything with me. So I just done what I want when I want it. And if somebody tried to tell me any different, I was basically like, well, I've raised myself this long. Why are you trying to step in now and be a parent,
And were you 15 at this time?
I was probably about 13 at this time.
Okay, 13.
Yeah, and I was just, and I'd already smoked weed and smoked cigarettes and been having sex with older guys and just trying to fill that emptiness and that void inside of me, that I'd had. I was just a broken little girl, that wanted a family, that wanted to be loved, So, when I was 14, I shot up liquid morphine for the first time, which I'd been around drugs my entire life. I'd seen it done. I just helped with it firsthand. I just experienced a lot of it, So I knew what it was and I knew what it was about. And when I got shot up, and then when I just felt that high, I instantly was just like, man, I love that. That was bar none, that was it, because I always had this turmoil inside of me, and I was always just so broken and just sad, and I would always try to joke and be happy, but it was never long lasting, I was just miserable at a young age, I'd even try to kill myself a couple times, by the time that I was 14. And when I was about 15, we went to one of her old boyfriends that got out of jail, and we went to his house, and even though they were like back in the back room doing whatever, whenever they'd come out, me and him was like making eyes at each other, like we was flirting or whatever. And so it wasn't long after that that he and I started dating, and I actually moved in with him, moved out of my dad's house even though I wasn't staying there, and I moved in with my 30-year-old boyfriend and his almost 60-year-old dad. And you know, I thought I was in love. All my life I wanted a family, all my life I wanted a home to take care of, you know, and I thought this was the way to get it, you know. I didn't have a real idea of what love was or how to get it, you know, because no one had ever truly loved me. No one had ever loved me in a right way to show me that they will give up everything, give their life up for me like the Lord has, you know. So my ideal of love was warped and perverted. So when shortly after I moved with him, I dropped out of high school, and I'd stay home all day, and I'd cook and I'd clean for him and his dad. And not long after that, I started shooting up every day. I fell in love with that. It was pain pills, Percocets, and so whenever we would run out of drugs, we would and would be pinned up, like hard up. He started pimping me out, but it wasn't in a way that was like, you know, oh, I'm your pimp, you're my hoe, I'm going to take you to do this, you know, here's the contract. It was more so in a way that he was slick and he was smooth about it, you know, especially to, you know, people say, oh, she's 15, she's old enough. I was 15, I was a child. I didn't know no better. No one took the time to be like, hey man, that's not right. So he would like be like, he was like, man, I'm sick. He's like, I know you're sick. He's like, just go over here and hang out with him. I'd be like, you know, he's like, he thinks you're pretty anyway. So I'd go over there and I'd hang out with whoever for a few hours, just hanging out and talking and just flirting, you know, but it progressed from that very quickly. You know, you can only flirt for so long, and went from that to kind of like, at first I was like, man, what? And then quickly, like, he was okay with it, so I was like, well, I'm going to be okay with it. And before I knew it, I was trading sex for drugs. I was just doing whatever it took to get us our fix. So, I guess all that filth and just stuff weighed me down, and I was just chasing after drugs even more, and I just kind of started to detest him, you know, so I realized that I didn't need him anymore. So I just started pimping myself out. I would go, you know, I was a young girl, pretty young girl, and I would do whatever it took to get whatever I needed. So I always had a place to stay. I always had a family. I had a family in every trap house in Baderville, you know. You know, I was never without drugs. I always had friends, or thought I did. So when I was probably about 16, there was a social worker that started looking for me. Her name was Joanne Van Zandt, and man, she was relentless. I love to use that word because I know that's how the Lord is with us. He will not relent on trying to get us. We're His above all else, and He will do what it takes to bring us back to Him. And I know that He gave that social worker that desire to chase after me. She put herself in dangerous situations, not one time, but many times. She would go into trap houses where people would be geeked out, hiding guns and all kinds of drugs, and she would just come in there after me. Have you seen this young girl? I'm looking for her. And I know the Lord done that because He cared for me. So she finally caught up with me, and I went to juvie, and I got a dry out for a few months, and then so I went to court, and you know, I thought they were just going to tell me I could go back to school, make up my credits, whatever. But instead, they told me I needed long-term rehab, nothing less than 6 months. And I was just flabbergasted. I'm like, I don't need rehab. I'm not a drug addict, you know. And I was a mess. And I did need rehab. I'm glad they didn't let me out of jail. You know, it probably saved my life. So, you know, I went to rehab for 3 months. And then after that, I went to boot camp for 6 months. And, you know, I done really well the whole time. I excelled. I made up all my credits for high school. I got to graduate high school. You know, while I was in boot camp, I was at the top of my platoon. I'd done so well as long as I had someone right there telling me how to do something what to do, when to do it, you know. As long as someone else was telling me what to do, I was just fine. But as soon as, you know, so after I came home, it was 3 months after I'd been home, I relapsed. I graduated high school, and then a month after that, I started shooting up again with that same boyfriend that I was with when I was 15. And I say, you know, like, as long as someone was telling me what to do, I'd done well. And that was because my heart wasn't different. I was still that broke, scared little girl that no one ever cared about, that no one ever taught any different. You know, so my heart hadn't changed. I was still that same broken little girl, you know. So, so after that, I went to jail for the first time. I caught my first felony charge at 18, and then I started just getting in and out of jail, and I was so much worse this time in my addiction. You know, I can't even remember hardly a lot of it. So right before I turned 20, I went to jail, and the same officer that had arrested me when I was a minor for all that stuff I'd been in was the same officer that arrested me the last time, and he was like, Rachel, why don't you go back to rehab? And Joanne, which so happened to be his girlfriend now, was actually my social worker when I was a kid. He was like, Joanne actually works for Unite, and she helps people get back into rehab or go to rehab. And I was like, rehab? I don't need rehab. You know, I was not for it. I was against it. And but finally he just wouldn't stop, and I know that was the Lord giving him the desire not to stop, because the Lord had a plan and a purpose for me, because the Lord is the one person that's always cared about me. So my heart was still so hard. I was like, yeah, just let me out of this cop car, I'll go to rehab in the morning. So he of course didn't let me out, put me in booking, and I went to the hole. And a few days later, Joanne came to see me. And I remember thinking, like, why am I so emotional? You know, I was just crying, and I was just so upset. And she was like, honey, do you want to go to rehab? And I was like, you know, and I was just crying. And I couldn't figure, and I know now that that was the Lord softening my heart. He was taking my heart of stone and making it a heart of flesh. He was making his desires my desires. Even before I was saved, he was working on me, and he was moving into me. He was prepared me. She was like, don't you want to go to rehab to change your life? She's like, they'll help you get a home. They'll help you have a family. I was like, man, a home? I've never even had my own bedroom. I said, a family? You know, that sounds amazing. And it was just, the Lord was just, she was saying all the right things. The Lord was working in me. So I was like, yeah, I'll go to rehab. And then a few days later, it was the same thing in court. You know, because I knew when the judge was like, so it says here you want to go to rehab. Do you? You know, the Lord gave me that free will. He didn't force me to go to rehab. He was softening my heart, though. So when I knew if I waited in jail, I could get out that next Tuesday. But man, something in me was softer. So I was like, and I was crying up there. And even I look over and just some person I barely even knew, he was like, just go. It's like, just do it. And I know that was the Lord just motivating me and encouraging me. So anyway, so I was like, yeah, I'll go to rehab. And they came and got me, and I was just a mess. I was flirting with the preacher, and I was just cussing, and when I found out it was a faith-based facility, I was like, basically cussed at it, and I said, you guys need to turn around and take me back to jail. I wasn't about it, you know, but they did. And even though, like, my flesh, myself wanted to, well, when I get there, I can just leave. You know, when I get there, I just walk myself home, you know. But I didn't, because the Lord was still making his desires my desires. It's like just, you know, telling me just the way. So I get there, man, I didn't have, my shoes I had on were broken. I didn't have nothing to my name, you know. So, and when I got to this rehab, Hope City, this faith-based facility, this Christ-centered facility, you know, everyone's like coming up to me, hugging me, and they're smiling, and I'm like, culture shocked. You know, I just got out of the hole with 4 nasty girls. You know, and I'm going here, and there's all these beautiful women that are just glowing, and they're just so happy. And they're coming up to me, and they're holding me like, honey, are you okay? What can I do to help you? Can I pray for you? You know, I love you so much. You know, and I'm like, you don't love me. You know, or like, I know how people love me. I know I've been loved by people, you know, but it was different. So I sat back and I watched, and I kept waiting for the ulterior motives to come out. I kept waiting for this crazy stuff to happen, that it always happens, you know? But it didn't. And I just kept watching, and I noticed, man, there's something different about these women. And each one of them had one thing in common. They were all Christians. They were all believers of the Lord. They were all like Christ. He had came in and he had saved each one of their souls. He had forgiven them and shown them mercy and showed them love. And through that, they were able to show me true love and to show me mercy. And I was able to come to know the Lord by coming to know them. And I got saved. And I tell you, the Lord, I had so much shame and guilt from how I'd been, from how dirty I'd been. And he took all of that away. You know, so I got saved. Needless to say, I've been there ever since. You know. And
So you're in college.
I am in college. I'm getting ready to complete my freshman year of college. I'm going to be a social worker. You know, my life is just, it's phenomenal, and it's all glory to the Lord. You know.
And you're now engaged.
I am engaged
to a Christian guy.
Yes, to a good godly man. You know? And the Lord has blessed me. He has blessed me so much, you know. And I'm so thankful for my life now. It's so drastically different than what it was before, you know.
It's a great story of hope and redemption.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, so I knew you for today. We actually had met when I was in one of my most favorite jobs at the Laurel County Detention Center. So I just want you to introduce yourself and just tell us your story. And you probably need to talk as loud as you can.
Oh, okay. So my name is Sarah. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I've lived down here for about 9 or 10 years now. So I grew up in a Christian home, a Church of God home. Both of my parents worked in ministry. They didn't use drugs or anything, but their life did not reflect that. It was complete torture and torment. My dad, he had sexually abused my sister and I from the time we were 5 and up. My mom, she was mentally and emotionally and physically abusive. She worked midnight, so she'd go to work, you know. My dad would do what he did, and then she'd come home and she'd just be in a rage all the time because she was tired and all those things. So she would just, do what she did. So we just went through life like that. So by the time I was 7, I knew what it felt like to be broken, to be hopeless, to feel dirty inside, to never had any love, never had any comfort or a safe place to say. So we grew up like that. I was a teen mom by the time I was 15 years old. I had my oldest daughter. And so I lived with her dad for a short period of time. My sister had gone to the school, reported what was happening. You know, she was a lot braver than I was. I would always just hide it. You know, I was embarrassed. I never wanted anybody to know those things about my life. You know, I just thought I could just, I don't know what I thought. You know, I didn't really think about it, I guess. I tried not to. So anyway, so she went to a counselor, told them, and so this particular weekend I'd come home because my daughter's father and I, we fought a lot, you know, just because I was a kid though, you know, and I had this screaming kid, and, you know, I just was just trying to go through life, I guess, you know. And so this particular weekend I come home and social services got called, and so they took my sister, me, and my little brother down to the station. My dad, you know, was arrested and charged, and he had signed like a stack like this thick of all the things he had done and all the allegations. And my mom, she was never brought criminally or anything, but she, you know, had accusations as well. She had to do the parenting and all that stuff. But they told her, you know, they said, you can come and get your kids, you know, that they were going to let us go home with her. And I assumed for her to be able to work a case plan or whatever they did back then, you know. But she said, I don't care, you know, about my kids. I just want to know how much my husband's bond was. So at that point, they had taken us younger kids into custody. And at that point, too, they had, you know, taken my daughter from me as well, just because, you know, I had nowhere to place her. And so, you know, my aunt she take my younger sister and brother. I did not get along very well with them, just I think I was just kind of just an angry teenager, I feel like, you know, so I lashed out a lot. So I got put into Children's Home in Detroit till I turned 18. And so when I turned 18, I aged out to the street. And so back then they didn't really have mommy and baby programs. They didn't really have anything for that situation. So they just laid a case plan before me and said, you know, you've got to go to court and saying all these things. I'm like, what does all this even mean? You know, I have no clue. But I was like, okay, you know, and so I moved back with my mom. I was 18 and walking down the street one day, and I saw this guy who was drunk and in the back of the car and showed me a little bit of affection, and I fell in love with him. I thought for sure I'd hit the jackpot. I was like, oh, she's cute. I said, he likes me, you know? And so, but I didn't really know what an alcoholic was or anything, you know? But he liked me, and so I was okay with that, you know? And so we just stayed together, you know? So I moved into his mom's house, and she opened up her home and helped me get my daughter back. So I got Natalie back when she was about 2 years old. She called me Sarah forever, you know, and I was okay with that. And so I, you know, began to have kids. So every 2 years I'd had a baby, you know, and so I was just, I guess, trying to do what the world says is an ideal family, just trying to work, be a mom, be a good mom at that, you know. But he was my boyfriend at the time, but he was an alcoholic, you know, and he never worked. He would scream and cuss and yell all the time. We'd fight, and I would, of course, why don't you love me? And just, it's always back and forth like that, you know. So he got into an accident and started taking pain medication. I was just having a bad day one day and had a bad headache. My back hurt, and you know, I was just telling him, well, I don't feel good. You know, he's like, well, here, try this, and gave me a half of Loratab. And so when it kicked in, I was like, man, you know, I just like instantly, like as soon as it started to work, I felt like different. You know, like, oh, I can take care of these kids, because they were all little anyway, and I could clean my house, and I could cook, and I'm like, in my mind, I was being what I wanted to be, which was a mom. You know, and I thought that I could take care of them. And so it progressed, though. So that half turned into a whole, and then so on. And then you start buying them because you're running out of them. And then I started to get sick. And I was telling my friend, like, gosh, I'm really sick today. You know, he's like, you're addicted. He goes, you're addicted to pills. I said, you're crazy. I'll never be a drug addict. You know, that is not me. But the truth was, I was full blown, fully addicted, you know. And so that had gone on for a little bit, you know, and so then I had realized that you know, I had a problem. You know, this had gone for a few months after that, but I entered into a detox center in Detroit. Actually, I think it was Pontiac, and so you get in there, and so I had been in there, and you're going through all these classes, all these things, and people start glorifying. Well, if you like this, you'll love that. So the whole time outside of class, like we're in our dorms and stuff, and all people are talking about was heroin. Yeah. And the euphoria and all these great things, but is what I wish that people would really put out there that I wish I had known. They don't tell the things that they have lost, the things that these drugs take, you know, that what it does to your life or to your children, you know. So I know in some of those detox days I've been there, you know, our mind ain't there. We're not thinking like that, and I understand that, but I wish I heard some of those things at some point, you know. But so the kid's dad was always in and out of jail. He gets out of jail, comes home, and so I start telling him these things I've learned. I'm like, well, you know, we could do this, because my mind was still back in addiction. I still had street mentality, still trying to like think of a hustle or trying to get high, or just an addict, you know, that addict mentality. And
So that was even after detox.
yeah, because
I
nothing
mean,
had changed.
Yeah.
So, you know, we like to put this appearance on like things have changed. You know, well, even when we get out of jail, you know, we'll be like, oh, I'm better now. I did that 3 months that did it for me. I'm going to do better. But the whole time you're like side hustling, you know, manipulating your family and your children, all these different things. But you're putting on this persona like everything's fine. The truth is nothing has changed. You know, it just hasn't. You know, so I started telling these things, and so I told him about heroin. I said, well, I heard about this. And he's like, really? He said, well, I know somebody. I said, well, surely not. So I'm thinking, I didn't say surely not, but I was like, really? Yeah. And so he goes and gets it and comes home, and he boots me up 30 units right off the rip and dropped me. I'll never forget it. You know, and to a normal person who was an addict, they would think, gosh, that was scary. But I was like, man, I was in love. Yeah. And I hate to say that, but that is the truth. you know. And so I just fell in love with this because it filled me, is what I thought, and it had numbed and suppressed everything I was feeling, you know. And so yet again,
So it was doing the exact opposite of what you thought it was doing.
yeah. So I thought it was working,
Yeah.
but it was exact opposite, yeah. And so I just, you know, started ripping and running. It did not take long, you know, and it literally is like shooting Satan in your veins. That's fact, you know, and you're breathing the breath of Satan, I feel like, you know. And so this had gone on, and, you know, we're living with his mom, and it's just toxic, and it's just always a fight, a struggle, and just, it was awful, you know, but it's like I needed that. You know, because anything that I thought was good was not good. It scared me to actually be normal of what normal is, you know. If it wasn't toxic and crazy, I didn't want nothing to do with it. You know, it was outside of my comfort. And so we moved down here to Kentucky because, man, life is starting to fall apart. You know, it's just becoming a mess. We're living with the kids and his mom, just all this madness happening, you know. Can barely afford to pay the bills. We're stealing and lying, and so the idea was to come down here to get clean, because I thought if I just changed everything around me, then I could get clean. So we moved down here, his mom, the kids, we just picked up and moved down here, you know. I stayed clean for just a couple of years, though. And so I wasn't mentally clean. I just didn't know anybody. But my mind still continued to run like that. I still was always like, well, maybe I'd go to the store just to see if I could find somebody who fit the profile of what a drug addict would look like, and just try to strike conversation. You know, so he had ended up getting a job in Laurel County somewhere, and, you know, he met people there. And so they started talking about Suboxone, you know, and so we're talking about Suboxone. He even brings somebody home, and we're, you know, hanging out and start shooting up Suboxone, you know. And so then I find out that Medicaid will pay for Suboxone. And you could go to the doctor, and the doctor will prescribe it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I was like, this is it. So not only can I stay high, the government will pay for it, and it is legal. I could get pulled over with a wrapper in my purse, and I ain't going to jail because I have a prescription. If that ain't a setup from the enemy, man, I'm telling you, I don't know what is, because that right there opened up a whole new gateway.
So normally you take Suboxone in your mouth,
Yes.
either a strip melts. Is that the way you take it?
Yeah, underneath the tongue.
Okay, but you were taking these strips and melting them down and shooting them up.
Yes, even with a pill form, you can do the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, you can liquefy it, and so you'd go back to the doctor, you know, and so then you start realizing that these strips, you know, have a value on the street, so you can start trading these strips for other things, you know, and so it's just crazy, and so it's sick, is what it is, you know. But that's what we think like, you know. And so then, of course, he's in and out of jail like he's always been. Brought home some more people. He'd always bring buddies home, you know. And so then they start talking about meth, you know. And so I start smoking it with him and his buddies, you know. And then he'd go back to jail, and so I pick up where he had left off. So everything I hated about him, I had become. You know, so he'd get back out, and by this point, I'm full-blown IV meth addict. And of course, he's picking right up to, you know, nothing's changed there. And so when we start fighting and hitting each other and calling each other's names, and the kids are witnessing all these things, people in and out of the house, roaches and bed bugs and cussing, screaming, and the kids literally, like, see me and him, like, blowing at each other, you know? And so I never even considered my kids. That's just the truth. At that point, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but it's real, I didn't care. Yeah. Because what I cared about was me and how I felt, and I was hurting, I was empty, and I was mad about it. I was mad at everything, you know? So domestic violence situation arose between the two of us, you know, because we both lost our minds. I'd lost my mind. You know, I was gone, you know? And so charges were filed against him. And so they come out to arrest us. They bring social services. Thank you, Jesus, that happened. I thank God for that all the time. And they arrested him, and they told me, they said, you have to leave, because if you do not leave, we are taking these kids into our custody. And I didn't want them to leave. You know, his mom lived with us, and, you know, she paid the bills, and she enabled us 100%. And so I decided to leave, you know, and so I left. And so where did I go? Right back to my mom and dad's. So I'd never dealt with the issues long ago. You know, so I was still broken, I was still empty, I was still hopeless, and I felt just as dirty and just as ashamed as I did that I could remember when I was 7. Yeah. All that come back to life, you know, and on top of a drug addiction, you know, that fueled it times 1,000, you know. And so I was allowed to supervise visits, supervise phone calls, but, you know, of course, when you're in addiction, you get out and you get in trouble. You know, so I'd got, and I had already been arrested, like at one point, I think in 2017, but I got right back out, you know, and so this time I got into big trouble. I was all over WKYT, ended up just doing crazy stuff just because I was crazy. I was like out of my mind, you know, and so I went to jail, and so my little brother found out he had passed away from a heroin overdose. My family come to the jail and told me about it, you know, so I had court the next day to take a plea. And so I'm telling the attorney this, and so she's telling the judge all these things, you know, and I'm just like melting down, and of course being extra, you know, it's all about me, you know, trying to play that victim role. And I'm like, you know, Your Honor, I've got to get out, and I need to be there for my family, and I'm just pleading my case to him, you know. So they, of course, have pity on me, and so they put an ankle monitor on me, you know. But the whole time I was standing there lying and manipulating, all I could think about was getting out and get a shot of dope, and that's exactly what I did. I got out, got the ankle monitor on, didn't bother charging it. I went straight to the dope man, and we left for Michigan that night to go to the funeral. I get up there and I stay high the whole time, telling my family, playing the whole cards, you know. And so I come back after the funeral, and I knew I had court on June 18th, and I was trying to tell the court, you know, I had to go to this funeral. If you could just give me a day, I'll send you all the information from the funeral. I'm really trying to suit this thing up, you know. Now, they were not buying it. They're like, listen, you know, so they took all my visits, all my phone calls. I wasn't allowed to have zero contact with any of my kids. They weren't allowed to talk to me on Messenger. I wasn't allowed to have pictures, nothing. They had cut everything off, and rightfully so, because I did that, you know. And I tried to play victim in that. I tried to manipulate that, you know. And so instead of that being a reason to get better, it fueled it. It fueled the fire, the self-pity, and, well, I don't have my kids, so I might as well just act a fool, you know. And that's what I did. So my use got worse. And so not only did the use get worse, I lost my mind. Like, I'm literally seeing things, hearing things that are not even there, that are just living in an unrealistic world. But deep down, I really wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be everything that my parents were. I wanted to have a mommy heart. You know, I really did, but I just never knew how to achieve that. I didn't even know what that would begin to look like, and I was still selfish. You know, I wasn't wanting to give that up yet. You know, it's like I was holding on to this, you know. And so several overdoses. I was in and out of the hospital. I cut my ankle monitor off because I thought crazy stuff about it. And, you know, just like, and a lot of the overdoses I had were intentional. You know, I would just try to kill myself. One time I went to this hill, it's in between St. Joseph London Hospital and that worship center. There's like that little, so that's where I pray at still today, you know. But I went to there, and I'm just screaming, you know, at God. I'm like, you know, where were you? You know, like, where were you all my life? You know, never protected me. You know, you never loved me. You know, and I'm just like screaming. I'm like flailing my arms, and I'm just like yelling at him. You know, and so I pick up and continue to walk because I thought I was seeing things again. And I'm just like, my mind, it's like, and I know that was the enemy. Like, he had like me chemically bound in my mind. I'm so tormented. You know, I don't know how to explain that, you know. And so I had gotten a warrant for my arrest. I didn't know it at the time, you know, but I ended up overdosing again. I had a grand mal seizure. I ended up in the hospital in Corbin, and I was convinced they were poisoning my PICC line. You know, so I leave against medical advice, right back to the dope man. You know, you would think that that would be enough, and I was so sick. I was like, it's like I couldn't breathe sometimes, you know. And so I get out, and I go right back to my ex-husband because I'm thinking I'm going to fix everything. I just like lived in this whirlwind all the time, you know. And so after that, I ended up overdosing again, you know, and I had another grand mal seizure, and it was a bad one, you know. So I ended up in the ICU and on life support, and you know, and I know that was the Lord breathing through that machine. Like, I can look back and say, I didn't know then, but I know now, you know. And so I had a nurse. She'd come in, she'd take care of me, and she'd say, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me, you know. And I didn't understand it because the way, but it did something inside, you know. But I didn't know that at the time. And she just loved me, you know. She took care of me. She bathed me. She spoke life into me when man, most people that look at a drug addict, somebody who's got sores from head to toe and who's riddled with infection, don't even care about their own kids. They're a castaway. But man, she was obedient. Man, she loved me because the Lord loved her, and He put that love in her, and He orchestrated that. You know, so my kids come in. I wasn't supposed to see them. I know the Lord softened my ex-mother-in-law's heart, and she brought 3 of them. You know, and they're standing at the foot of my bed, and they're weeping. You know, I remember my little girl just like scared because of what she's looking at, you know. And I'm just like, that wrestled something, you know. And so the nurse was doing her rounds, and I hugged them and told them I loved them, and was just talking to them. And so they left. They were about 15 minutes they were there, you know. And so when she left, and I'm sitting in that room, man, I'm just like, God, you're gonna have to help me, you know. I said, I don't know what to pray, but you gotta help me, you know, because clearly I can't die, you know. And
I've been trying to.
I've been trying to, yeah, you know. And I said, but I didn't even know what to say. I just said, you're just gonna have to help, you know. And so I get out. I was in there for a little while, and I got out and had the plan of going to detox unit, and like I really, you know, because that nurse and stuff and the social workers, and I had this plan of wanting to get into rehab and try to get my life together, you know. And so I get out, and you know, I'm super sick, and I was in the back seat of my brother's car. You know, we're going down Old Country Road. I picked my friend up from rehab, you know, and like just so sick, and we get pulled over because he's got a flat tire, and we just look crazy, I'm sure, to the cops. But the cop comes up to the window, and he's like, you know, I need to see your ID. And I told him, I said, I have a warrant for my arrest, you know. And I was just laying in the seat, and I was just so tired, you know. I was super tired. So he ran my name, and he come back, and he goes, you know, I need you to step out of the car, you know. And so I did, you know, and I got out of the car, and he arrested me. And so when he had put those handcuffs on me for the first time in my life, you know, and I always remember it's like I was safe, you know, and I was free, and I can't explain it, but that's just the truth, you know. So I went to jail, and I go before the judge, and he gives me my year, and I go back to my cell, and he's like, you got 365, you know. And like I have this joy inside, and I can't explain it. I just don't understand it, you know. And I'm back at my cell, and I'm playing spades, and like, you know, even when the inmate, she's like, gosh, for you getting a year, you sure are happy. And I was like, man, it's over. You know, like, you don't even understand. And I meant that with everything in me. So I started to go to church, and Hope City was coming in, and people are testifying, and you know, and it's like I know the Lord was doing that, and He was drawing me. And so then I joined Celebrate Recovery, and I'll be honest, I wanted 25% off my sentence. But
most people who came to Celebrate Recovery wanted 25% off.
But thank the Lord, you know, that He had a different plan for my life, and I got that Bible and started to read in it, you know, and I would go to church and all that, and do the classes, and then I started to pray for to be in a different place, you know. And I'm thinking like another jail cell, to be surrounded by people who really want to change and do different, you know. And so then I get up from the kitchen, they tell me, pack my stuff, you're going home. And I was like, oh my gosh, because at that point, you know, you're scared, you've got free will. Are you really gonna get out and do what you've been praying for? You know, and that's scary. To me it was, you know. And so I get down the booking chair, and they're like, you're going to Hope City. And I was like, oh no. Because you hear stories of all kinds of, I was like, oh no, they've got me. You
A
know,
place where I have to go be good.
yeah. So I get there, you know, and I'm super freaked out, you know, and I'm scared to death. And I begged them for 3 weeks to take me back to jail, you know, because I was afraid, you know. And so what I was afraid of was me.
Yeah.
And facing all the things I'd done, and facing my family and my kids, and you know, and surrendering that will, you know, of wanting to do your own thing. And so we had a prayer room twice a day, and I'm telling you, I'm so grateful for that, you know. And so you just get alone with God for an hour before your day starts and before your day ends. And so I'm up there, and I was planning on leaving in my mind, you know, because I just didn't think I could do it, you know. And so I get up there, and I'm sliding in my seat, rolling my eyes and looking around and just trying to like avoid what the Lord's trying to do, you know. I'm like, no. And so I go up to the pulpit, I grab a white Bible, and I sat down, you know. I'm just kind of looking around, and I opened it, and in my lap fell a handwritten piece of paper that said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so that was my first real God moment when He spoke. You know, and so I have it in a frame on my wall at home. So like when I sit up on my bed, that's the first thing that I see, you know, because sometimes, you know, you can doubt yourself, or you can doubt what the Lord's trying to do, you know, but I know that He used that in my life so mightily, you know. And so at that point I'd surrendered, And the great thing about Hope City too, you know, they do love you back to life. When I was begging to go back to jail, they're like, you're not going back to jail. God has a plan for your life. You can do this. Your children love you. You can do this. We love you. You know, we're not taking you back, you know, and so I'm thankful for that, you know. And so I just surrendered. I start digging into the Bible. I start, you know, building this relationship with the Lord. And so I'm coming upon graduation. And so at this point, I'm just getting supervised visits 1 hour a week. And I was grateful for that. And so I was seeking out to just get unsupervised visits. So I'm thinking maybe I'd take them out to eat or do a mommy thing, you know. And so I started fasting, and I didn't know what that meant then. I'm telling you, I had no clue, but I was hungry.
That's right.
You know, and I wanted to turn God's voice up, and I was willing to do whatever it took, you know. And so I'm fasting, and I lived in the transitional house, and I go home that night and open up the fridge, and there's one pickle in this jar. I was like, oh my gosh, that pickle had diamonds on it, you know. I was like, golly, yes, Lord. But you know, I slammed the door.
That's
I'm like, no, you know. So I had prayed through it like I had been taught in this program, you know. And so the next day I go to court, and the court recommendation was some supervised visits was the best shot at being a mom to them kids that I had. And man, I deserved that. I didn't even deserve that much, to be honest, you know. But God saw fit. So I get there, and so the kids' dad is there in custody, of course, and he has a really good lawyer, around here. And you know, the petition was for him to get out, go live with his mom, who had the kids, and work the case plan. And just for me to get some of those visits, and I'm just like, I start crying. I'm like, man, God, I'm not okay with this, you know. But if this is your will, man, you're gonna have to help me accept it, because I'm just not okay with it, you know. But I was willing to do whatever it took that he wanted from me, and I meant that, you know. And so, you know, we took a little break and come back, and you know, they said, you know, Mr. So-and-so cannot get out and go live with these kids. He's got to work his case plan. You know, so everybody's just kind of looking around, and the judge's like, this is how we're going to settle it. He says, you know, you get out, you go work your case plan. And he goes, all 5 kids to Hope City with Mom July the 1st. And I didn't even graduate to the 15th. I walked out of that courtroom with 5 kids. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do now, you know? So he did that. And so he had that mercy, you know? And so it's been 3 years now. You know, he's been so good to me. He's been so good to my kids. I have full custody. At my house right now, I have Natalie, and I have her 2 kids. I'm a peer support specialist, I'm a case law advocate, and I work in the same very courts, the very same judge and cops had taken me to jail 30 years ago, and I'm fighting and advocating for people who are just like myself.
Yeah.
You know, and so God's just done His wonderful work. And so not only has He done that, my dad's recently passed away. He has put such a forgiveness in my heart that I had the opportunity to go and sit with him, you know, and tell him about Jesus. And to tell him that I loved him and that I forgave him. And now today my mom and I, we have a relationship, you know. And so that's all I've ever wanted, you know, was a relationship with my mom. But, you know, God's given me a family, a big family. I have brothers and I have sisters, and my children have brothers and they have sisters, and they're learning about the Lord. And, you know, they're telling their friends about the Lord. Like, 2 of my kids go to private school, and they're surrounded by people who just love the Lord. And so that's what it's all about, you know. So growing up, you know, I thought religious people were religious, you know, but today I know that, man, the real love of Christ, man, it is real. It's a real love. It is unmotivated, you know, and He just loves us. It doesn't matter what our backgrounds, it doesn't matter the things that we've done yesterday, because He loves us, and His mercies are new every single day. You know, what He's done for me, He will absolutely do for somebody else. You just have to be willing, you know, so I'm grateful for that. He's super good.
That's a real story of hope and redemption, I tell you. Chris, if you'll introduce yourself. Can we still see you?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. And just tell us your story.
Okay, so my name is Christopher Michael Rouse, 35 years old. I'm from Barberville. Everybody calls me Mookie. Started out when I was young. I had a little sister that was a year younger than me. Me and her had different fathers, my mother. So my name's Christopher Michael Ross. I'm 35 years old. I'm from Barberville, Kentucky. So when So I had a sister that was a year younger than me. Me and her had different fathers. Her dad was my stepfather. Of course, I didn't know it at an early age, but it started young. I was always faced with not being wanted. It was like she was always treated different than I was. He would, if I would get in trouble, he would punish me severely. He used to beat on me, whip on me, kick on me like a lot harder than what should have been done for a little kid, and my sister, she had different treatment, and so he was aggressive with my mother, so I dealt with all that. So one day she came to me and she told me that he wasn't my real dad. So he was going to work when she told me. I never will forget it. She told me that he wasn't my real dad. And it was like this big weight was lifted off of me. It was like I knew it, So at that time, I just felt like a big relief. So she would eventually she would end up, taking me to the health department to get me tested to find out who my real father was. And I know now that the reason they done it is to fuel their addiction. I didn't know that when I was a young kid. I didn't understand that, but the reason that she was doing it was to get child support and stuff from him so she could get money to fuel their addiction. So I remember the very first time that I met my real father. I remember I went down there to the health department and I was real anxious, So when we get down there, he comes in and my mom, starts talking to him, and he immediately looks at me, and the very first words that my real father ever said to me was, "I don't know what your mom's told you, but you're not my kid." So immediately, it was like my bubble was bursted. I felt even more not wanted. Here I was so happy. I was thinking that somebody was going to come in and take me out of the situation that I was in. So it was just like a big buzzard, and no, be wrong again, So ended up going home, living. They would end up, they were both in addiction real bad, so they would end up fighting. He would beat her up all the time. I would see that all the time, and I really loved my mom, and I had a lot of resentment toward him. So I would see my mom get beat up, and eventually they would end up getting so strung out that they would eventually drift apart. And so my mom took us, me and my sister, and my mom was not mature enough to be a mother to two kids. She was still like in the party mode. She was irresponsible. I loved her. I felt like I was taking care of her more than she was taking care of me. She would always party and stuff. Like if anything that we got, food stamps, anything like that, she would take and trade them in to get drugs with. She always had different men coming in and out of the house. I remember just being a little kid walking in on the bathroom and seeing her using drugs, sitting on the toilet shooting up, and I didn't understand that as a little kid. I didn't know what that was. All I knew that was while she was in there doing that, I knew that she was going to be in there forever. She'd be in there for hours, and I didn't know what was going on. So eventually, once she's taking care of us like that, I would wear the same clothes over and over to school. The only time that I would really get to eat real good was when I was in school. So people would start to notice that, So it wasn't long, my family stepped in. So my family ended up stepping in, and my aunt ended up adopting me, and my sister went to her grandma's to live with her biological grandma. So we got split up. My aunt and uncle, they ran a chicken fighting pit. I was a young man at the time. I was probably about 10 or 11 years old when I went to live with them, and they ran the chicken fights, so it wasn't a very good place for a 10 or 11-year-old kid to be at. There was just a lot of drugs going around, prostitution, gambling. It was as spot that most of the adults don't need to be, much less a little kid. So that's where I learned a lot of my meanness at. I learned to smoke pot there. Well, it's the first time I ever smoked pot. I remember doing a pill or two there. So eventually on down the road, I'd end up, going to high school and stuff, and I would get a job with my uncles working, hanging drywall. So hanging drywall was a pretty rough job, it was strenuous, it was hard on your body. So I came to realize, when I would do these drugs, smoke pot or take pills, it would make it a lot easier on me working, and I could work a lot faster, and then I was getting all these praises from my uncles because I was doing such a good job, and I was making them more money because I was working a lot faster. So that's how it kind of got started with me and the pills. So I'd hang drywall. I kept a job pretty much from the time I was 13 on up. I was pretty consistent working because it was a family business. So I'd keep on working. And then I remember some of my friends, the pipeline to Florida had started. That's when it was getting started up. I remember, I think I was about 19, 20, 21 years old, and people were going down to Florida, and they were getting pain pills, and I was seeing all my friends doing this, and they were getting money and staying high and all this stuff, and here I was having to break my back, to just get a little bit, and I wouldn't be near as high as them. So I started making a trip or two myself down there to Florida, and I'd do it for, I don't know, I guess for a couple of years. We would run backwards and forwards. So what happened was I got really addicted to strong pain pills. And all during that time, I'm with my girl. I got a girlfriend, and I've had one kid with her. And I moved out. I live at Knoxwood Apartments with her down in Barberville. And so me and her are living together. I'm working backwards and forwards, hanging drywall, doing this and doing that, going backwards, getting pills. My pill addiction's getting real strong. So one night, I'm working, and I go home to my boss's house, and we're all over there partying. And I remember there was a phone call, and it was my aunt told me that I needed to go up to my grandma's house, that something had happened to her, and my grandma just lived down the road. So ended up going to my grandma's house, and I got there, and my grandma comes out the door, and when she comes out the door, I noticed that there was nothing wrong with her, but while I was sitting there was somebody that called her house and told me that I needed to go to the emergency room. So what had happened was my mom, she was an alcoholic, and she had been out partying with my aunt. Her and my aunt was dating a bootlegger, and so my mom went out there with her so she could get drunk, for free. So they were up there partying, and I guess that he got jealous or something. I don't know what happened. To this day, I still don't know what happened, but he ended up jerking a gun out on my aunt, and he was going to kill her. Well, in the process of him taking aim down on her to kill her, my mom came and jumped in front of her to shield her. So I don't understand what's going on. All I know is I need to go to the emergency room. So I get down there, and this cop is telling me, I'm talking to the police. The police is everywhere down there, and I'm talking to him, and I'm, it really didn't even sink in what was going on, and he was telling me that she was shot and all this and that, and I remember asking him, I was like, well, can I talk to my mom? And he told me, that's when he told me that she had been shot 10 times, and that she was deceased. So my aunt had been shot 3 times, and the bullets that went through my mom, they struck my mom and came through and hit her, which is probably what saved her life because she didn't get hit with the full force of the bullet. So you know, my mom, she wasn't the greatest mom growing up, but I loved her, you know, and I always felt like I needed to take care of her from the time I was young. You know, I always had that feeling that if I leave, something's going to happen to her, you know, because she's not able to take care of herself. And that was even as a young child, 10, 11 years old, I thought that. So when that happened, you know, it broke me. And here I was in this addiction with these pills, and the trips from Florida had quit, you know, and so the pills costed so much money, so I decided to try meth. My baby sister, she was, I knew that she had been doing meth, and she was a lot further along in it than me, and she was real strung out, just living from place to place, you know, anywhere she could lay her head. So I just set out that day and I started using just a little bit of meth, but I stayed working and stuff and functioning, and I remember it probably wasn't even 8 months later, it wasn't even a year later, so I'm up working, hanging drywall, and on my way home we stop at a liquor store and I get a bottle of liquor and we drink it on the way home. So when I get there to my apartment, where my wife, or she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend, I get there and one of my friends is there, and I'm wondering, you know, what's up. Immediately I think it's something bad, you know. So I go in there and I can look at her, and I'm still kind of drunk, you know, and I look at her and I can tell that she's been crying. So you know, I'm wondering what's going on. I thought for sure that she was cheating on me or something, but she wasn't, and he told me that I needed to sit down. So what had happened was my sister had, she'd been out with some friends of hers, you know, they were out ripping and roaring, and they had robbed this meth dealer, this guy that had a bunch of meth, and she had took it, and so they got away with it, and they went back to where they were using at, and her and her friends were there, and what they were doing was they were trying to take it from her, I guess, and in the process she put it where they couldn't get it. She put the meth inside of herself where they couldn't get it. So she had so much meth on her, when she done it, the package came open, and there was a website that was called Topics that was on the internet where people used to post just random things. So he tells me to sit down, and he starts showing me this video of all these people, you know, and I just see my baby sister laying in the floor just going into seizures and stuff, and everybody around her, all of the people around her were saying such mean things about her. They were cussing her. I can't imagine, you know, how she must have felt the last few minutes of her life. You know, she's laying there convulsing, and they're like, somebody get her out of here, get her out of my house, you know, so take her out there and throw her in a ditch, and they're cussing her and calling her all kinds of names. And when I saw that, it destroyed me. It completely destroyed me. So I left that day, and the job was out the door. My family, my wife, or my girlfriend and my 2 kids, they were out the door. I pretty much didn't care about anything. I went, and I'd hardened my heart so much, started ripping and roaring. I went from 6 months' time, I went from having a little drug habit, you know, and had an apartment, 2 vehicles, a girlfriend, 2 kids, to 6 months all I had was a bicycle and a backpack. And I just was robbing people. I was trying my best to get took out of the world, is what that's what I was looking for. I would rob drug dealers and try to get them to kill me. I just didn't care about life. You know, I was in and out of jail, so when you run around, I was eating The only time that I was eating, I remember going to Little Caesars, and I would wait there till like they shut down at 11 o'clock, so I would wait there. And as soon as they would leave, I would go up there and get in the dumpster, you know, and get pizza out there because I was about to starve to death because every dollar I got either went in a poker machine or it went up in my arm to meth. So once you start going like that, it won't be long to either you'll get killed or you'll get put in jail. And I got put in jail. So I got put in jail for about a week, and it wasn't, I was laying back there in Knox County in the old jail, and there was about 22 of us, I'd say, in one cell, and it was so hot, and that guy come in there and he announced church. So when he said church, I was ready to go and get out of that cell. I was just ready to be out there because it was 100 degrees in there. So we went to church, and I really honestly can't tell you a word that the preacher said. It was just like the Lord was talking to me. He was showing me what the drug, that meth was doing to me. He was showing me how it was taking my family and everything. So when I left that church service, I was fired up. You know, I was going to quit doing drugs, and I was going. I was done with it. I was going to get my family back. So I ended up getting out of jail and went back to my apartment. She let me come back. She didn't want to let me come back. The only reason she let me come back was because of my kids, and she told me that she didn't want to see her son's father out there dead or in prison for the rest of his life. So she let me come back to her house, and she told me that the only way that I could stay there is if I was clean. So I went a week, and I done real good. I stayed inside. I didn't go to work or nothing. I stayed inside that apartment. I said, if this is what I got to do, I'll stay inside this apartment for the rest of my life, if this is what it takes. So I'm sitting there in that apartment, and the devil is cunning, and he knows what he's doing. Because there were so many times when I was on the streets that I would rob the nickels off a dead man's eyes to get a shot of dope. But the devil sent it right to my apartment that day, and he gave it to me for free. He sent a boy there, and the boy had been good to me before. He'd let me stay, but he was outdoors at the time. He said, man, I just need to use your bathroom. And I told him right off the rip, I said, man, I'm not trying to do nothing like that. I'm trying to straighten my life up. I want to be a father to my kids. And he said, well, man, I respect that, you know. And he's like, I just need to use your bathroom. So I felt some kind of sense that I owed him something, you know. So I let him come in there, and he went in the bathroom, and about 5-6 minutes he come out there, and his eyeballs was big around his quarters, hollering that I had to try this, the best stuff he ever done in his life. So there I was, and I tried it, and I didn't even get high off of it. It didn't even get me at all high. All I felt was shame. That's the only thing that I felt. I felt the shame of, what am I doing? You know, I've just done all this, and I knew that if I stayed there, that my woman was getting ready to get off work, and she knew that I was high. So I said, I'll leave, you know. So I left, but the problem is with me leaving is I stayed gone for 3 days. A normal person don't leave and go to the store and stay gone for 3 days. That's just not the way it works. If you leave, you're gone for a couple hours or something. You're not gone for 3 days. So I come back up in there after a 3-day binge, me staying tweaked out of my mind. I come back up in there, and here's all my stuff, or what's left of my stuff that my friends hadn't already went through, is sitting on the front porch, you know. And everybody that I lived in a set of apartments, so they all gathered around those apartments all the time. So they all went through most of my stuff. I didn't have much left. You could carry it in a backpack, you know. So I come back, and I tried to go in, and she was standing at the door, and she told me to leave. And I remember just thinking in my head, you know, she's not going to make me leave, you know, I can get back in here, because she'd always let me come back. But this time was different, though. So I thought, you know, maybe I'll get in there and I'll get a glass of water and I'll get to stay. And she told me again, she's like, I really want you to leave or I'm calling the law. And I told her, I said, well, can I just get a glass of water and that's it and I'll leave? And she's like, no. She's like, you can get off my porch or I'm calling the law. So I didn't believe her, and I sit down. There was like a little chair on the porch. I sit down in that chair, and I didn't believe that she would do it until I heard, the law on the phone. And when I heard that, I still had a little buzz, and plus I'd done some other stuff, and so once a law gets called, when you're in that state of mind, you get out there. So, I got up and I took off out there, and I'd say I got about a quarter of a mile down the road, and it was just like, it had to be the Lord, it was just like something was so heavy on my heart. It was just like I remembered growing up, how I felt not wanted, how my stepdad treated me, how I didn't have no father, how I was passed backwards and forwards like a burden, and that just struck me. I was like, is my kids going to be like that? Because I genuinely loved them, I just didn't want to quit what I was doing. So I turned around and I walked back up there and I pleaded with her. She still had the phone in her hand. She was still going to call law on me, and I told her, I said something that struck her. She was getting ready to call law on me again, and I said, I'll do whatever I need to do. I said, I just can't do it right here at Knoxwood Apartments. I can't be in this environment and get clean, but I want to get clean so bad. So she called her brother, and it was just the Lord that done it, because she called her brother, and they had started out a men's rehab. They had the women's rehab that these girls had went through. It wasn't even a rehab at the time. It was just a little house out in the middle of a field. So I agreed to go to the rehab because I thought that I would have time. I thought I could wiggle my way back in there, manipulate, and get back in there. I got time. I got like 3 hours is all the time that I had. And here comes Scott up there, and I never will forget, I was standing out in the parking lot smoking a cigarette, and I remember seeing Tyler, and he's like, you going to have to put that cigarette out? I was like, oh God, what am I doing? So I get in there, because I'd already put my foot in my mouth, so I get in the vehicle with them, and I go out through there. And I'm like, where in the world are they taking me? They take me way out through this road. It's about dark too. And we get out here at this little house and pull over, and I'm like, they must be stopping to get something. And I'm just like sitting in there, and they all start getting out. And I'm like, is this it? And they're like, yeah, you're here. This is it. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, where am I at? It's just a little bitty old house, and it looks like it's about to fall over. The roof is sagging in the middle. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I got out, and right off the rip, there were people in there, man. Everybody was like all smiling and stuff and shaking my hand and patting me on the back and trying to hug on me and tell me they love me. And I was like, I don't care if you do love me. I'll be gone in the morning, I was not going to stay. I had my mind made up that I was going to leave. And so I just stuck it out for that night. And I remember, I think it was not the next day, but the day after that, we had church. And I remember going into church, and I remember the first time I ever heard Pastor Scott preach, and I have a Bible verse tattooed on my arm. And he started preaching that verse, the very verse that I have tattooed on my arm. And it was like the Lord spoke to me, saying, no, the verse is John 15:13, no greater love a man hath than to lay his life down for the brethren. And it just hit me, man. And all these people, the way they were treating me, I'm like, man, these people love me, And I tried to catch them slipping, and and they were the same every day, and I couldn't believe it, So here I am, almost 3 years later, 2.5 years later, and now the woman that told me that she'd never ever had nothing else to do with me and her's married. We've been married for a year now. Had both of my kids back. They sit in church with me every day, every time I go to church. And I used to wake up every morning with such a feeling of dread and despair, and now I wake up and my heart's filled with joy and life, and I get the best thing about all of it. I mean, the main best thing is that I get to see other people come in, and they're just like I was. They're full of dread and despair, and I get to see them. I get to see them start to, give up this and give up that, and then I get to see the Lord start to move in their life, and I get to see them start to get their kids back, and I get to see them start getting the same desire that I have to get out there and to run and to tell everybody about Christ, because that's what somebody didn't care to do for me, and that's what saved me, was that they had love for me when I didn't love myself, when I didn't love anybody, when everybody had done counted me out. They loved me, just like the Bible says, just like Christ does, And I'm just glad to be here.
Amen.
So, Chris, that's such a wonderful story of hope and redemption and grace. And so it's been a long day. I've taken up so much of your time. I'm so grateful for your story, so thankful. But it is Thanksgiving, and if you could say just, this will be hard for you all, I can already tell. But if you could put it in a sentence for Thanksgiving, what would you want to say? I mean, each of your lives, each of you had a story of one person who said something or did something or shared something or just lived a life in front of you. I know you, Billy, was it Dan you were talking about? And you wondered if he would be the same the next day or the next time you saw him. And you both talked about Joanne, who hunted you down and who just said a word, just a sentence. So if you could say a sentence to somebody who's out here, who's really struggling, maybe it's a parent struggling because their kids are just really away. Maybe it's somebody like you who's struggling because their parents were not the parents they needed to be. If you could give somebody a Thanksgiving blessing, I guess, what would you want to say to somebody? Who wants to go first?
No problem. I don't care to go first. Just accept Christ in your life, and Jesus loves you. And it's not a criteria that you're gonna meet. It's Christ in you. Is, for me, the only good in me is Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Christ in you, the hope of glory.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah.
I would say, just no matter what state of mind you're in, don't give up, because the Lord has a plan for all of us, no matter what. And no matter how the world has treated you, there is people out there that are of Christ as people that do care about you. So just don't give up. Keep on looking.
Okay.
I would just say there is hope. It's not of this world. So I just encourage, anybody out there that's kind of broken, at a place where they're just tired of digging and they're ready for change, to reach out to maybe the person in their life that they trust the most. Hopefully it's someone that is a Christian man or woman that's and so just don't give up. Don't get down on yourself. So there's stories of hope here, and so just that you are loved and you are worth it.
Yeah. What would you ladies say?
I would say you're never too far gone. When you think that you're nothing or that you don't have value, you are. If there's breath in your lungs, there's hope. If you have a heartbeat, there's hope. Run to the Father. He loves you. It doesn't matter what you've done yesterday. It doesn't matter what you've done 2 seconds ago. There's hope and there's grace and there's mercy, and it's just waiting on you. And we love you. We do. And man, I'm just super grateful. I'm thankful.
Rachel?
I'm sitting here panicked. I'm like, what do I say? What's the right thing to say, you know? And then, like, it just keeps repeating in my head that there's so much love that comes from the Father, you know? For anybody that's broken, that's hurt, that's sad, that's alone, you know, there's one man that can fix all of that. He's not a man, he's a God. He's the King of Kings, and he can fix every problem that you have, you know?
So, if you're a female or if you are a parent who has a female that's struggling and you need a place to go, because I've talked with each of you and you said the guys say you can get in a day.
Yeah.
That fast. Can you at Hope
Yeah.
City get in a day? So Chris, who do they contact? If it's a male, who do they contact?
They would contact Redemption Road Recovery Center for men. It's in
I got the phone.
the actual address is 109 Morris Lane, Hydrick, Kentucky, 40949. Yep, 40949. And the phone number is 1-606 545 5169.
Okay. And where do females go?
We're located at 335 North Main Street. It's it's below the church, the North Main Community Church, and our phone number is 606-545-7083. Yeah. So
So say that one more time.
it's 545-7083.
Okay.
And so
545
I just like that too. It
Yeah.
is free of cost.
Yes.
There's no
Yeah.
charge.
No,
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
So
Yep.
people don't have to worry about not having the money
Right.
to
That's
come
right.
because sometimes
Absolutely.
people have lost. They've lost all they have, and their families have lost all they
Yeah.
have, and they feel like they can't afford. We've already discussed this. It is a non-tobacco
Yeah, not
facility.
No
Not an
cell
MAT.
phones.
No
cussing.
cell phones. No
No
cussing.
medically treated. It's not an
Yeah,
MAT.
we're no MATs.
Yeah.
We just love the Lord and want to see people saved and set free, you know? And so also too, you know, you can always give us a call if you're not ready, which we hope you will be or want to, but if you are not ready or not at that place, please give us a call. We will pray with you. We will help you. You know, and if you want, you know, if you need some other place to go, if we don't fit what you're looking for, we can also help refer you and direct you to the right place that you're looking for. So you're not alone. So.
Okay. I know that many times, and I think Josie, who's not here today, Josie is one of the other guys. I met Josie at the Laurel County Detention Center, and his wife is delivering, maybe as we speak now, a healthy baby.
Yeah.
But when you go there, you don't have homes because you've
Right.
lost everything. And you all now are living there very close to the church. And it's my understanding that the church owns several properties on that street. Is that correct?
It's
Yes.
all of them but 3. I believe.
All but 3. And so this is a facility that not only helps you recover from your addiction, but also shows you the path to true liberty, which is through Christ, and also helps supply you and get you started in a place to live and
They'll
to
offer
be
you a
healthy.
job, a home.
Okay.
No.
So I just want to say as we end up, I'm just so grateful to have you in my home, and so thankful for the miracle that God has done in your lives. So thankful for your commitment to continue to help others, and I'm always looking for people who have recovered to help teach me how to help other people, you know, in our city and in our county. But I'm just really, really so thankful and so grateful to each of you.
Thank
So
you.
I wish you the best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Thanksgiving.
This tomorrow and forever.
Yes.
That's what I would say.